our toe into a little more object-oriented programming. I love object-oriented programming because it makes a lot of life easier, a lot of programming easier, and when things get easier, they get more fun, and it also allows us to kind of separate our ideas into different source files. And so when I usually can separate my ideas, I can simplify my ideas, and again, makes it easier to keep track of, and I don't have to think about as much, and I can have more fun. And so I really am excited about the awesomeness that is object-oriented programming. And let's go ahead and get started. I've got a few examples that we're going to be working through today out of Daniel Liang's 10th edition of Introduction to Java Programming. And so we're working out of Chapter 9. This is where Daniel introduces object-oriented programming. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, friends, so I went ahead, I'm going to be working in an Ubuntu environment today, and this is the Eclipse Integrated Development Environment, and I've got a Java examples repository that I want to be working with, and like I said, we'll be in the Daniel Liang book, Introduction to Java Programming, and we'll be working out of Chapter 9, and there's a lot of good information in the book for you to read, and I encourage you all to do so. But what I want to work through today is an example listing 9.1. And so the way Daniel did this, he did everything in one giant file. So what you can see is the class starts up here, and then it ends right here, and then he's got a second class that he's defined that gives us things like we've got the data radius that we can have. We've got a couple of constructors where we can make things, and then we've got a couple of behaviors or methods that we can go down and do that are defined down below that. So I'm going to do this slightly different today. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to start out with one file, and then I'll make a second file for my second class. So let's get that started here in Eclipse. So the first thing I do a File, New, Java Project. We're going to call this Liang chapter 09, and we'll call this listings. And then I'll use the default Java runtime environment, go ahead and finish that, and then I'll go ahead and let's make sure everything is in there. Yep. And we'll do a new package under this one, and I'll call this ch09 listing 01, and then we'll finish that, and then we'll come in, we'll make a new class, and this class we'll also call ch09 listing 01. The IDE lets us know, hey, we like it better when you have capital letters on that. So this one we will include the public static void main to match the example that Daniel's done, and there we've got that. Before I get too far, okay, we know that runs. And whenever I'm doing new things, I always like to also have a good place that I know the code starts and a good place that I know the code stops. And so now I know anything that happens in between those two spots for sure happened because I got to this spot in the code. Okay, so the first error that pops up, it says, I cannot resolve simple circle to a type. So I'll simply just lean on the IDE to create this. It knows the folder it needs to go into, it knows the package it's going to use. It's going to be public, that means we can call this from other classes, but we're not going to have a main method. So we can save this, we come back here, and we see that that first error has gone away. And so, but we've still, let me separate this. On line 9, we're doing something that I'm not quite comfortable with. Java has what they call a baked-in constructor or a default constructor, and that's what we're using here. We're using the default constructor that says, hey, we don't have to have anything special, we're not passing anything in, and we're just going to create a new simple circle. I'm a little not comfortable with that, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make a constructor. So constructors need to be public, that way they can be called from other classes. I'm telling it I'm not passing anything in, so there's no parameters to pass in, and I'm not going to set anything inside. And so now we've got our default constructor, and that's just to make me a little bit happier. Now, let's move on to line 11, and it's word wrap to also be line 12. Let's deal with this first line. So it says, hey, the area of the circle of radius, circle radius, and it says radius cannot be resolved. You can just create a field radius and type simple circle. So let's do that. It says, let's make it a public, and let's make it a string. I'm going to say let's make it a double instead. And then it says get area cannot be resolved. So let's just create a method get area. So we need to have, oh, I'm not going to be using the to-do list today, so I deleted that. And we also need to return a double. There we go. And now area of a circle is pi r squared. So we'll do math.pi times math.pow, and then we'll do this dot radius, and we'll do 2. All right, let's save that, and we'll come here and we'll save this, and it looks like everything will run, so let's go ahead and check that. I do Control A to select all, Control I to smart indent, Control S to save, and then Control F11 to run it. And it says the area of the circle radius 0 is 0. So we check our print statement. It says we're supposed to have a radius of 1. Okay, so that means it's supposed to be created with the default radius of 1. So let's just fix that right quick in our creator that we are in our constructor that we already made. We just say this dot radius equals 1. And now we run it again. And 1 times 1 is still 1 times 3 is going to be 3. So that should match 1 and 3. And we see 1 and 3. Okay, let's move on and let's grab our next little chunk of code here. So we come back here to the one that has the main method. We will add it in. Oh, look, it says now I've got a new thing. I've got a new constructor, and this constructor is defining a new radius at the beginning. And so we'll need to create a separate constructor for that. We're not going to actually pass a int. I'll call this a, this is a double, and I'm not going to call this I. Instead, I'm going to call this creation radius. To signify that this is the radius of when these things get created. And so this dot radius equals, and I will lean on my copy paste friend here, and save this now, and it's all happy. Save it, run it, and it says 25 and 1963. And we come down here at the bottom just to check that, 25 and 1963. Okay, now it says create circle 3, and this one should be completely uneventful. So we'll just pop this down in here. 125, 49078, and 125, 490. 49087, 49087. Okay, so those line up fairly well. Now, let's see. Oh, here we go. It's got a modifier here. So let's just get this last little piece running. Control A, Control I, Control S to save. And it says, all right. Let's go ahead and run this, and 100 times another 100, that's going to be 4 decimal places over, so we just moved 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places over here. 31415.9, yep, that is a good match. Math checks out. Okay, So there are a couple of things that I don't like about this. So one of the things that I don't like is the I don't like being able to modify the radius from the outside. And Daniel actually makes that note here. And so we're going to just leverage what Daniel's already laid out for us. And we'll just come here like this, save it. And the IDE says, hey, do you want me to create a setter? And so we'll just do that right quick. Void set radius. And then I'll change this to a double because we're working in doubles. It just happened to be an integer. And I'll say updated radius, and I'll say this dot radius equals updated radius. Get rid of this extra space that we don't really need here. Here's another extra space, and down here's one more extra space, and that's nice. So let's go back and let's run our code and make sure that nothing has changed. And so that still works. Now there's one other thing that's kind of bothersome to me. In 1, 2, 3, 4 places, we've got it saying dot radius. So I'm going to change this to get radius. And so it's going to tell me, hey, get radius does not actually exist. I'm going to show you a trick though that makes this slightly easier. I'm even going to go change this back here. So now we're back to where everything is acting directly on radius. I'm simply going to come in here and I'm going to make radius private. And so the idea is we can still interface with radius, but only through the methods now. So we'll have set radius, we'll also have get radius. We come back here and it says create getter and setter for radius. And get radius, set radius, getter and setter, and there we go. Click on OK. And so now it's got circle to get radius, get radius, get radius, get radius, and set radius. And so let's look at what the code is. We've got a get radius, and we already had the set radius. That's already working. This dot set radius 1, and so that cleaned up the code nicely. And notice how there's not a whole lot of copy and pasting or redundant code. It's all function calls, so that just makes things a little bit tighter. Okay, now there's one more thing that I want to call your attention to. Daniel also included this one, return the perimeter of the circle. This is get perimeter. We don't have this set up yet. The equation for this, this is basically the definition of pi. Pi is equal to the perimeter of a circle divided by its diameter. The diameter is just 2 times the radius. So 2 times something times math.pi should be our perimeter. Well, I think we should use 1/2 for the radius here. So I'm just going to come back here and I'm going to do a little bit. I'm going to say, let's do circle 1 dot set radius and set that to 1/2. And then I'll say, let's just grab this print statement here. And I will say the, whoops, need that word. The perimeter of the circle with radius is, and then we'll just type this in. Okay, so it says this doesn't exist, so we'll create it. And then we come here and we need it to return a double. And again, today I'm not using the to-do list, so we'll just knock that off. And it'll be 2 times this dot radius times math.pi. All right, friends, so that should run it. And the perimeter of the circle of radius, all right, I think I hit a wrong button somewhere. Circle, we need to be working with circle 1. And circle 1. Save that, run it. Okay. Nope. I got in a hurry. I was having a good time. Had a logical error on my part. That was my mistake. Okay. So the perimeter of the circle of radius, and then we say what the radius, and then we say print is circle get perimeter. So radius 1/2. We know that 1/2 times 2 times pi should be about this, because 1/2 times 2 is 1. 1 times pi is pi, and that's about pi. Okay, so that's all working about the way that we had it, that we wanted it. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of a couple of print statements that we don't really need anymore now that we've got the code working the way that we wanted it to. And what you'll see is just getting rid of a few extra lines. Our code here now is actually quite similar to the code that Daniel had in his, only instead of directly going to the variables, we've got getters and setters, and we'll see that that is kind of a standard practice. We can also see that one of the differences is our class definition is in a separate file. That's slightly different than what Daniel had, but not a whole lot different. It just means we've got two different tabs now that we can look at the code. We don't have to scroll up and down. But other than that, everything looks about the same in our second class. Daniel's got a get perimeter, get area, he's got a radius, and then he's got a set radius. He doesn't have a get radius. We made a getter so that we wouldn't necessarily directly just call on the variable inside the field, but that is okay. So with that, we'll call that good for this example. All right, friends, what we saw there was how to do a constructor. We also saw how to use getters and setters, and we saw a little bit and talked a little bit about private versus public variables. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and again, thank you for being with me. I hope you enjoy objects as much as I do, and thanks for being with us. Have a wonderful day.